All right, welcome. So I'm super excited today because my special guest is fellow artist Irene Purcell. Now, Irene is an abstract artist from Yorkshire in England, and she began her painting journey in 2018 at age 63. And the overreaching theme of her work is to explore the concept of everything is connected. So welcome, Irene. I can't wait to jump into a nice, juicy conversation with you.
Thanks for asking me, Crystal. Yeah, me too. I love a good conversation, and I'm all ears. I'm all mouth, actually, when I say I'm all.
Wonderful. All right. So let's just jump in. And I'll ask you, 2018, what started it all off?
Yeah, it was the very sort of end of 2019, perhaps October, November, something. I think I'd had an abiding sense that I wanted to paint for a little while. I'd gone and had a couple of day workshops with an artist within a couple of years before then, I think. I'd done a couple of workshops, and that had introduced me to using acrylic paint. And so I had some kit, and it was just always a matter of when will I wonder when I'll paint, you know? So I started. And I guess that's the bigger background, is that I suppose I've always been fairly creative, but I've never pursued art particularly.
Yeah.
There were periods off and on over the years when I'd have a go. I'd go to some classes, I'd try watercolors, I'd do life drawing. So there was a sort of awareness in me that there was probably some art that could come out, but it didn't decide to show its face sort of independently, without classes, without anyone else helping, until the end of 2008. So it had been working up to it very slowly and gradually.
Yeah, that's great. And then you found inspiration from Louise Fletcher.
I did. It was very early in 2019. I had just started playing around. I did have this big idea. I knew for sure that I didn't want to paint what I saw. I'd discovered very little satisfaction in that. And I wanted to express myself. And I had this, because of my own prior 30-some years deep delving into everything that is and who am I, and my own deeper awareness of my connection. The theme for me was clear, which was, as you said, everything is connected. And so between starting and then seeing Louise online, I was throwing paint about, not throwing it. I was messing around, trying to express things in an abstract way. And they were weird and wonderful, and they were what they were, but I had no clue what to do. I saw a sidebar ad of Louise Fletcher, and she had an ad campaign on Facebook at that point. Clicked with interest, liked the cut of her jib, really connected to her as a person, and was instantly therefore interested in anything she had to offer. So I kind of gobbled up all the free stuff that she had going, and also contacted her to say, you mentioned a course, are you doing it? Yes, I'm doing it, and I'll put your name down. So Find Your Joy was going to be happening, but not until late in the year that year. It didn't start until about September that year, but I was signed up, revved up, couldn't wait. That was the first kind of obvious thing that I'd found someone and something that could give me some guidance and some help.
Absolutely.
But before that, I also saw, and I don't know if it was through Louise, but I saw CVP by Nicholas Wilton. Now he's a California artist, and he does this big course. Louise herself had done it, I think, the previous year. And so I got to hear of it, I got to know of it, and I did the free workshop. And this was in, I think it was March, so it was not very long after I'd met Louise online. And I just I loved it. It opened doors and windows. It was just amazing. But I was very conflicted, and I wrote to Louise to say, I'm really conflicted. I desperately want to do your course. I know I want to do your course, but there's this. And I don't know if I should or whatever. Anyway, she very helpfully wrote back, asked me a few questions to help me clarify, you know, how I really felt.
Yeah.
And that, I suppose one of the clinchers was, how would I feel if the course began and I wasn't on it? Ugh.
Great question.
I know, it's a really good one. I use it myself now. But then the other thing was, can I afford this? Do I have this much money available? And I had an account that had been for home improvements. I'd sold a caravan. I had a home improvements account as a result of that. I'd done a lot of work in the house. I knew there was something left in it, but I didn't know how much. And I looked into it, and it had about £15 more than I needed.
Yeah. Well, there's beautiful guidance. You
There
couldn't
you
ask
go.
for better clarity than that. And it's
No,
investment
no.
in ourselves, don't you think, when we invest in our art and our education and our growth?
Completely. And I didn't have a moment's pause to think, was it going to be money well spent? It was a gift to me.
Yeah.
I felt when I saw that I had that much money in my account, it wasn't as though I was spending my money on me. I felt I was being gifted.
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
This course.
Completely
And,
guided and supported.
And I don't worry if I feel I want to do a thing and it costs X and I happen to have X, just spend it. I know there's plenty of money in the world and it just keeps flowing round and round. So I did it. I jumped in. I did the 12 weeks with Nicholas, and immediately, I won't even go there. I'll wait until we're here if you want to know what happened the rest of that year. But yeah, that was the beginning of a big year.
That's
Very
great.
big year.
So I met you through Louise Fletcher's Finding Your Joy course, which I'm currently doing at the moment, and you're one of the wonderful coaches and mentors. So let's chat about that journey a little bit. Tell me about how that evolved for you.
Yeah, so back to 2019, after I finished Nicholas's course, through some amazing synchronicity, something else happened that I would never have hoped for, dreamt of, or thought could happen, which was that I found myself getting a city centre studio. At the same time, Find Your Joy was just starting. And so I had CVP under my belt. I then did Find Your Joy. At the end of Find Your Joy, and I'm a bit of a spoiler here for you. At the end of Find Your Joy, basically, we were sent out, you know. So it was like, here you go, my little chicks. You've learned everything I've got to teach you. Now, fly, my pretties. So I was like a bullet out of a gun. I was so completely ready to start exploring my work with all this new learning that I had gathered that year. And so off I went. And Louise was offering a follow-on course, which I just didn't do because I felt I'd done everything I could, I'd taken in everything I possibly could through these two amazing teachers. And so instead I went on a holiday and had a break and came back and just started painting. And that was it. What happened then, before we knew where we were in 2020, and flipping pandemic and everything affected everything, of course. But outside of that, I was simply approached by Louise before, in good time before Find Your Joy started again, and it was starting earlier in the year that time. And she just asked me if I wanted to be one of her coaches. She was going to take on 3 people. And I think what she looked for and what she found was the kind of people who waded in and offered help and support. And there must have been many, many others besides me and the other 2 that she landed upon. But I was one of the ones that she wanted, and I was absolutely thrilled, because I didn't tell you that the very minute I came across Louise online and listened to her and watched her, something inside me knew there's another connection going to happen here. I'm going to be more connected to this woman.
Yeah, you just had that inner knowing. Yeah,
I just knew she was one of my people. So she yeah, she asked me to be a coach. That was 2020. And 2021, she increased the number of coaches to 6. And 2022, we're still clinging on.
But I just think I love the way she's chosen the different coaches, because each of you brings a very different energy to it. And I can say quite unbiasedly that you are my favourite, which is why we're having this discussion. What I love about your energy is the playfulness, the strength, and then the depth, that spiritual depth that comes through in your conversation. And the first time I heard you talk, it was like, oh, all right, my little, antennas picked up, and it was like, now this lady is interesting. So one of the things that I know about you is that you had done about 30 years of spiritual inner work, personal growth. And that, you say, impacted your journey when you started painting. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yes, for sure. One of the things we find on Find Your Joy repeatedly is that when people invest in themselves to do the course, it's an investment of time and money. It's therefore a way of saying, this is right for me, I matter, I deserve this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take my work seriously. I need to learn a lot of stuff, but I'm putting myself first. So when they have done that, they enter and they start to discover that the very sort of heart of Find Your Joy, the joy in the title, is related to an inner freedom that they can find through noticing themselves, noticing what do I like, what do I not like? How do I feel when I'm asked to do that? Why do I feel that? They're asked to journal about those kind of inner dialogues. And what tends to happen for an awful lot of people is that as they try to open themselves up and expand, experience themselves fully, they discover all kinds of things which are in their way, including very often a lot of fear. So people are fearful of taking some sort of risk, even though it's only paint and paper and who's going to die, it still feels like a big risk to do things outside of your comfort zone. And so lots and lots of people have mini meltdowns. Lots of people start to talk about ways in which their wings have been clipped, ways in which they've never fully known themselves or recognized themselves or valued themselves. And the voices in their head, the critical inner judge voice is so powerful for so many people.
Yeah.
And I find that that's something we deal with an awful lot. So in my own case, because of all the work I'd done previously, I already loved myself. And I didn't have that kind of voice in me anymore. I had the kind of voice that said, oh, Irene, well done. Really genuinely, I am my best friend and I am in company with myself most of the time. And occasionally, if a little bit of an irritation arises against myself, I stop it. I see it immediately. It doesn't get a moment to bed in and have any effect on me. So because I knew I was loved, from a long time ago when I had a very particular experience, I had come to love me. And so when I started to paint, the road was clear. And I didn't have to get over any of that stuff. And I could be courageously expressive. It didn't feel like courage, it just felt like me being me.
It was just spontaneous and natural for you to flow in that way.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know how to, make anything strong or powerful, or I didn't know any art principles, but that's what 2019 was about, applying the learning of good principles to support my own natural output. So that was the main difference, that I didn't have to battle with the inner judge or the fear or any lack of confidence about whether it was okay to show up with my scribbles and scrolls, because it was okay.
Yeah.
And I guess I try to help others to reach that point without having to do 30 years of digging.
Yeah, well, for me, you actually hold that energy, you hold the space, and just in the way you answer our questions, you get that essence. It just oozes out of you. And I think, yeah, that's just a brilliant gift that you give to every person that's on the course. It really is, because it's actually what drew me to Louise in the course, because I've got a terrible fear about not being good enough. You know, somebody when I was a child said, you can't draw, it's not okay. And that's still in there. And I'm highly skilled in my embroidery. You know, it's taken me around the world, but that doesn't stop it interfering in my fear around drawing and painting. So many times over the years, I've dipped my toes into the ocean, done a little bit, it was just too uncomfortable, so I reversed back out, you know, went back to the good things, the things I'm good with. So when I saw Louise's course, it just spoke to my soul. You know, and for me in Australian dollars is actually quite a lot more than what she charges in pounds. And I didn't even give it a second thought. I just went straight, like I knew it. You know, like as you said, when you saw her, you knew it was the thing to follow. And it was the same for me. It's like, yep, this is the perfect timing. I am ready to do this. And I just think it's been the most wonderful course, because what she's offering is, I think, very unique in the world of art and art training.
Yes, so, it seems so to me.
Yeah, I guess my next question for you is, from Nicholas Wilton's course, you got technique and you got training in how to make the marks you wanted, and that kind of basic theoretical training, and then from Louise you got something different?
Nicholas really majors on these principles that will always strengthen a piece of work. If you're not sure if it's any good or not, if you follow through with these principles, you can improve it. Now, Louise isn't Nicholas, but she teaches the same kind of thing, because principles are principles. No matter how you come upon them, no matter how you discover that actually this is a principle that never fails. However you discover it, they just are there. And as Louise has pointed out recently, this is a bit of a sidetrack, but people talk about rules, the rule of thirds and the golden mean and all of this stuff. And it's okay. It helps some people at some point. But as Louise has pointed out, if you follow these principles, all of these rules are underneath. So the principles, you know, win. And Nicholas taught the principles. The difference with Louise is that she spends a lot more time at the beginning on the mindset and the freedom and discovering. She thinks it's much more important to discover your own true tendencies in the output that you produce before you start applying the principles. So the early weeks, as you know, are a lot to do with just getting into the flow of how you make marks. What are your natural color choices? What tools do you enjoy? And those exercises, for someone who's never done anything in the way of making paintings, can be really freeing in themselves. So for me that year, I got the solid principles first from Nicholas. Then I got all this kind of freedom stuff from Louise. And later in her course, she's moved on, as she has done already, as you know. She moves on then to applying principles to the greater freedom that she hopes we've already discovered. Find your joy isn't about la, 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 happy pink paintings, unless that's what you make. Your joy that she refers to is your inner freedom. It's feeling that you are really being you. And when you are, there isn't any other word for it really. You may not feel joyful. You may have come in to do some work on a bit of a somber day. But if you've discovered how to be freely you in your art, then you go to a better place. You can find flow, you can find peace. And so, yes, I got all of that from those two great teachers. And Louise, to this day, will say that Nicholas Wilton just made light bulbs go on all over the place for her too.
Yeah. For me, sorry?
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Beautifully. Thank you. So for me, it's about, when I work with my students, it's helping them find their unique voice, you know, showing their authentic self. And for women in particular, I think it's actually quite a challenge to really find their own unique voice, then have the courage to express it in whatever creative medium they've chosen, and then to maybe show it to the world, you know, really courageous. But I think besides the word joy and delight, which always comes up when you're in that feeling of flow and you've had that experience, you've tapped into that inner guidance system within, I like to call it, and something has come through you. I just think it takes people to a different level of expression in life, and I do believe it filters into other areas of your life. Have you found that as well?
I see that it happens in general. So it definitely happens. It's you cannot impact one element of yourself without it affecting the rest of you, because we're whole, we're connected, we're not, you know, an artist and a mother and a whatever. So for me, it's hard for me to notice chicken and egg, you know, scenario, because I suppose I started as someone who was expressive and did have self-confidence and peace and all of that stuff. That was in place, and therefore the art was able to flow without impedance. But I guess, you know, if I look at who I am today as opposed to 2019, I am wildly more me than I've ever been in my life. But at the same time, as art feeding that in me, which it absolutely does, I continue with the overall journey. You know, the spiritual, I use these to say spiritual. Because,
for lack of a better word,
for lack of a better word, indeed, because again, it suggests, doesn't it, if we talk about spiritual stuff, that there's compartments within us. There's a spiritual part and a not spiritual part, or there are spiritual people and not spiritual people. And that's, you know, that's untrue. But what I'm saying is, it's hard for me to detect what's doing what, because it's all happening at once.
Well, I imagine by now that you're so well integrated that you are just being your authentic self.
You know, I think I probably am. Yeah, I think that's as close to the truth as I would dare to get. Yeah, I think so. And that, of course, encompasses all things. I tell you this too, it's just a throwaway, but it was only last year that I told my kids I was gay. And I hadn't even known I was until I was about 50. And there had never been an occasion to bother telling them, because there wasn't someone in my life. If someone had come into my life, I'd have said, oh, guys, by the way, look, I've met someone and it's a woman. That never happened. So I just thought, oh, it's on a need to know basis. But last year, something nagged me. Something said, unless you're telling everybody that you know, and your children more than anyone, something important about you, A, there isn't full and complete, da-da, it's me, and B, you've kept a door partially closed. It's all right telling close friends, but if I haven't told my nearest and dearest, the door to possibilities of even meeting a person isn't fully open. So I did that last year. So yeah, and there's just like way more and more of me. There's more me than you can handle, kids, which is fine. It makes them feel very happy and secure. They don't have to bug me. Are you okay, Mum? How are you doing, Mum? Shall we come and see you, Mum? Nah, they just get on with their lives because I'm getting on with mine.
Yeah.
And
I think when you really tap into that authenticity and really just go out and be yourself, it does free everything up within you. Did you find after you made that final step that it changed your painting in any way?
The final step, what you mean, coming out to my kids, or yes, actually. That's a really good question, Crystal. Good girl.
All right, let's chat about that. How did it, what happened? What was the changes you noticed in your art after?
There was a shift. I hadn't connected it to that. And it may have been connected, but it may be. It's part, certainly, of the ongoing unfolding of all that I am. The back end of last year, I was doing a series of work, and my process had always been that I started with a number of boards. I normally work on boards or canvases if I was still kind of getting rid of a stock of old canvases, painting over them and so on. And I would prepare them and start. And I did a lot of layers. I did a lot of layers of paint and drawing and collage and sanding back and painting and so on. That was my process, until at some point the paintings would start to shift themselves into a particular thing or direction. What happened at the back end of last year, this series of paintings, there were 3 of them that were very larger than I'd worked on before, and therefore the business of getting stuff onto them took longer. Mm-hmm. And there were 3 of them side by side. So although I wasn't calling them a triptych, they were 3 big pieces side by side. So I never worked on one without working on the other 2. Everything was slower, slowed me right down, until we got to where I started seeing some deep beauty in these pieces that was looking out at me. I was looking at them, but they were looking at me. It was me looking at me. It was really delicious. And the thing I decided I needed to do was to place a photo transfer of my face into these pieces, 1 photo on each one.
Yeah.
And the size of the photos was probably something like this, so very close to life size on these 3 big boards. And it was me at different stages in my life. I wasn't being analytical about it. I just picked 3 different me's, and they went into these pieces. And then I noticed that what I needed to do was to make the area around the heads very light, and as though light was falling down upon them. And towards the very end, I then realized that this was me at all stages in my life, most of which was very, very hard and tough and difficult. And so amidst the light and the beauty and all the rest of it, I knew that I had to bring some darkness in. So I brought in some jagged darkness that was trying to encroach upon the person, but she was protected. And that was what they were telling me. They were telling me, yeah, you know, you've been through all the therapy, you've done all the stuff, you know that, you know, there was some very hard and some very dark times. You lived in very troubled situations. There was a lot of strife, but look at you, you know. And at the same time, somehow, I don't know. I was then prompted to go on and make more of these, and I did a short course, and I identified what that shift could be called. That the work was therefore going to be more autobiographical, spiritual, and transparent. Transparent, as in not transparent paint.
Yeah.
So it was like, yes, more of you, please now, more of you. And I did a whole series of about 14 after that, autobiographical pieces.
Beautiful.
And they didn't feel like they were therapy. They felt like they were closure of a lot of things.
Yeah. And from the sense I got when you were speaking was it was all of you, the whole journey.
Yeah. The really dark times are, part of who I am. But there's a way that we have sometimes, if we come through kind of counseling, where we really have to understand what was said and done to us. And we have to be angry with those people, and we have to forgive those people and let them go. And I've done all of that. But I found a new level of love for people, a whole new level of love, a whole new level of recognition of their innocence, of their own victimhood. It was just deeper. It just set me free, not only to be more fully me, but to know that I had always been safe. And that ties into something else that had happened, because very briefly, as part of a boost to my, spiritual seeing last year, I started to follow someone who was a channeler. And I started to do a lot more automatic writing of my own. I'd done that before, but I picked it back up. And during the period of automatic writing, I remember saying at one point, listen, who am I talking to? Have you got a name? And I got this word, and the word is salvus, S-A-L-V-U-S, which I didn't know the meaning of. So I wrote it down. And when I looked it up, it's a Latin word for safe.
Oh, how beautiful is that?
It's on my arm now.
Oh, that's your tattoo. Fabulous. I love it.
I got a tattoo the year before which says free.
Free. There's that freedom we've been talking about. Beautiful.
I thought I was as free as I could be then. And then I got the salvus, and it's, So in answer to your question, I think definitely part of the greater opening and freedom and authenticity was released when I told my kids that final little bit about me, which didn't seem important. It wasn't important to them. They didn't give a stuff. It was fine. I was their mum, and that was that.
Yeah.
But it was important for me to say, another bit of the jigsaw puzzle of me that I've just not really bothered talking about. So
yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. All right, so let's take a little detour, a very quick detour, and then we'll get back to the art. But who was the channeler that you followed? I'm curious.
Lee Harris.
Oh, yes, he's one of my favorites. Beautiful. Lee and Aziz.
Lee and Aziz. I loved them. I loved them, Crystal. I discovered them through some of the people. And the minute that I heard Lee channeling Aziz, the word I had for me was home. Now, it's very interesting that I later found it wasn't so much that my home was to be with Lee and Aziz. It was more that they were speaking from a place that really was my home, that I'd lost a little bit of contact with. And that was just kind of like the realm, the greater realm. Because as part of my journey, there was something I'd lost. And I tried on various occasions in different ways to see if it was possible in any way to get it back in a new form. And it didn't seem to happen. And there was always a vestige of grief within me. And when I heard Lee and Aziz, I felt home. But Lee and Aziz acted as a catalyst to send me somewhere else. And after that, I found myself with Andrew Harvey, who was someone I'd known from the past. He's a mystic. And through him, I rediscovered the new way back to my own actual personal home. So it kind of,
beautiful.
It was step one, step two, step three. But I love Lee. He has a beautiful energy.
He does.
He's the most true and authentic and honest man.
Yeah.
And he gave me a lot. And suddenly that tap, I just turned it off. I'd been guided to where I needed to be.
Yeah. I had a similar journey with him. I discovered him during COVID, I think, when we were all needing a little bit of extra hope and support,
Yes.
and followed
Yes.
him very closely, was a member of the portal and everything. And then earlier this year, I left him and transitioned into somebody else who feels right for me at this point of the journey. And so, yeah, I love that.
Fabulous.
He was,
It's fabulous, isn't it?
yeah,
That
both
doing
are part
this.
of our journeys on opposite, sides of the world.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's
Yeah.
dip back into your automatic writing. Are you still doing that? All right.
No, I seem to have had really intense periods of doing any given particular practice, and then it just tails off. And I've learned to let it go. I used to allow myself to sort of nag a little bit and say, you haven't had your quiet time. What are you doing? Well, maybe you should be doing this again. I don't do that anymore. And I noted that, we might be advised that a particular practice is a good idea, and I would not say that it isn't. But if it isn't flowing for me, it isn't necessary, is where I've come to. Yeah. I seem to do certain things or read certain things or have certain practices when they are of vital importance to my own nourishment. And I had this really intensive period of nourishment from around June last year when I came across Lee until about a month or two ago now. So it lasted a year and it was intense. It was very deep. And I kind of see it as seasonal, and there are times to eat and there are times to digest the food. So I'm not really doing that at the moment, but I could do it now. It's there. It's something that I could use if I wanted to. Yeah. And I seem to be having a spell of allowing everything that's been taken in, allowing the new sense of being home to fully embed itself and let that simply be witnessed in who I am, in any alteration, in any nuance. And I always also notice this. It's in the fruit that we know the health of the tree. And people are known by their fruits. They're known by their character, by their actions and so on, by the feeling that they bring to a situation. And I note that things are shifting in my life, things are happening, which I'm not furiously kind of manifesting, There's a time for learning about how to do certain things. There's a time for noticing what makes us feel fed, but also I think there's a time, I think you said it earlier, for simply being. And it's kind of like I can trust myself to be. And any you see, practices I think are to enable us and to help us to become. And it's the training wheels on the bike, they can come off and you can then pick and choose, dip in and dip out. So at the moment it's a quiet spell in terms of whether I do anything in the mornings, any morning readings. At the side of me in this little room
there's a nice little stack of books. Fabulous.
those are the morning things, and I was using all of those. I was using all of those every day, and I'm just plugging my computer back in. I don't think it's going to run out, but you never know. And at the moment, it's sporadic and occasional, but yeah, that was a long answer. I'm sorry to your question about the
not at all. I just love that you've got such a deep connection to your own inner knowing that you're just letting it flow. You know when the time to do meditation is, or automatic writing is, or yoga is, or painting is, or whatever it is. Because I think too many of us give our authority away by being told what to do from the outside, rather than just sitting quietly, really feeling, waiting for that knowing to, that little inner guidance voice inside to guide us where the next step is. And it changes from day to day for me. You know, what's right for me today might not what be right for me tomorrow. I might need to do something completely different tomorrow.
Totally.
And yeah, I think that's another journey that we take as human beings, just to really land in that place of inner knowing. And also for me, one of the benefits of COVID was the world had to stop and go within. And then new things developed from that. And for me, it was, I've always been an introvert, always done my spiritual things, done my creative things, but it allowed me to go to a deeper level.
Yes.
And I've learned that there is just as much value in being. For me, it would be sitting in the sun and just being. And then from that, other things erupt and, you know, and unfold. So,
sure.
yeah.
And I've come through the whole art practice side of things too, because art is still relatively new in my life. I've come through all of that stuff about, well, I'm paying a monthly rent for my studio. I ought to be.
I should.
I should be there. I should have been. And I've tried to structure my life. I've tried to say, I'll get up at 6. I'll do my readings and my writing. Then I'll do my workout. And then I'll go to the studio. And I did that for a while. I did it in that sort of way. But I've just it's. I go when I go, and that sounds odd, but there's this great trust I have in my body. My body will rise up and do a thing when it's time to do it, and that includes, oh, the fridge is empty, I need to go shopping. Right, make a mental note. The fridge is empty, I need to go shopping. Go to the fridge later that day. What on earth is there to eat? Oh, there's this, I could do that, I could do this. So there's still some food and I can still eat.
Yeah.
And the next day, yeah, I know I need to go shopping. Okay, I've acknowledged that. And it might be 3 days. And then one day I just go, shopping.
Yep.
And I love it. I love it. I love the shopping when I go, when it's right.
Yeah.
And that's how it feels for me for just about everything now. And I go to the studio when my body wants to go to the studio, and it feels great. And I'm not beating myself up about not having a particular regular routine. Nothing about my life is regular and routine. It's different every day. And it does include some days where I've got the space, I've got the time, I've got the energy, but I just don't have the desire, and I want to read this book and I'm going to sit here and do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting in tune with all of that though, and you talk about giving your power away to other authorities. It's a journey. That's that word, but you can't get away from it. We practice things as others suggest them to us in order to find what works for us. I hope that's the best case scenario, and it's really good to have someone who we feel is helping us stay on track. But it's the training wheels. We've got to be able, in the end, I think, to kind of, do it our own way and do it independently. Absolutely. Without feeling that we're answering to anyone else.
Yep. For me, anything that comes from outside is a blessing, but it's not essential. So the only thing that really matters, and it's taken me a long time to get to this point, is my connection with my inner self. I call it my higher self. Is the most important relationship, and I work on that daily in whatever form that needs to take for that day, because that's what sustains me. That's home. That guides me.
Absolutely.
All right, so something I do really want to discuss with you is everything is connected. This theme that you went down, let's have a chat about that.
Yeah, I can remember when I was about 11 having explained to me the must have been chemistry lessons or something, physics, I don't know, a diagram of an atom. And I looked at that and I just thought instantly, I saw, it's the same as the sun and the planets, isn't it? It's the same thing. Obvious to me. And that's the first one I can remember that made me recognize, that's like that, yeah. And all through my life, without giving it any real weight, I had that sense that, the roots of the tree are exactly the same as the branches of the tree. Oh yeah, that's the same as a brain, isn't it? oh yeah, that's like I always recognized that things were the same as each other. And as time goes on and on and on, we recognize, and we hear and we read and we learn from science too, that when something happens here, it has an effect over there, and that a pair of particles separated by, you know, millions of miles or years or whatever time space is, when something happens to this one, that one has the response, the reaction. So science knows that everything's connected, but so does spirituality. And the most exciting thing for me about science is that it's catching up with ancient wisdom.
Yeah, finally.
Yes, with what the ancients have always known. And it's a terribly exciting time, I think, for us to start to see these things arising. For me then, I wanted to be free to find a way of saying that. And that's massive, you know, it's just impossible to do. But it kind of remains an overarching thing that we've got at one and the same time this utter magnitude, vastness, and then the kind of minute tininess, which inside it has a whole vastness, world within a world. It blows my mind. And I think the thing for me that hangs it all together is the universal sky. I love the image of the sky. Really sad that where I live, I don't get to see it. I don't get to see a dark, I really don't ever see a dark sky. It's so sad. Yeah. But a dark sky scattered with stars, and the images that we're now seeing from the new space telescope of galaxy upon galaxy upon galaxy upon galaxy in a space that if we were to hold our arm here with one grain of sand and hold it to the sky, that's the size of the piece of sky in which these millions of galaxies have been photographed. Is just mind-blowing. So it's the sky and the vastness of that which is the anchor point for me. And early paintings included dark blue and kind of aurora borealis colors and spatterings of stars, but in the foreground of the piece would be stalks of grass. So it was kind of like an ant's eye view of the universe, and everything is connected, kind of expanded and moved out into some strange directions. And I did some surreal looking stuff where little pictures of octopuses were finding their way into very abstract pieces. And the thought in my mind was, well, an octopus has just as much right to be there as anything else. It was kind of like the whole of life could be expressed by placing an octopus in an abstract piece that didn't have any theme. And yeah, if you want to probe any further on that, I can't think of anything else to say about it, because when it's just something that you know and that you are excited by, it has to find its way into the work in some way, shape or form. So I guess for me, it's mostly kind of shapes and layers. And one thing apparently meaningless, it just belongs there, and it can be there. And people would look at some of my work and say, why did you put that there? And I'd say, I don't know. What do you think? And, no, and I really meant it. I don't know why I felt I wanted to put that in there. Does it mean anything to you? And it's I suppose it's a very big playing field for me just to kind of let go and be as abstract as I want.
It is, and I was just delighted when I saw that was the theme of your work, because I thought, wow, what a concept to explore, especially at this particular time on Earth when, you know, we're starting to see that we are a global community, and we're starting to understand that we are all connected. It's not us and them. And I think the division energy in the world is so heightened at the moment, because after that, there'll be a real connection that's coming together, and a new sense of community that we haven't seen in our lifetimes. And I'm super excited about that as well.
Yeah, Yeah, me too. I find myself at the moment, this is another thing, and earlier I used the word spiritual and I did this, and I also said that I'd let it be known that my theme for that series of work earlier this year was autobiographical, spiritual, and transparent. I'd stopped making any reference whatsoever to spirituality in anything that I said or did.
Mm-hmm.
I got the book, your friend Christopher Miller.
My favourite book.
I need to catch up with you. I need to catch up and see what it was that you read. And I only got it yesterday, so I've only read a little bit of it. But the God having to not be used, and I like that he says right at the start of his book, look, let's just agree, shall we, as we go through this book, that I'm going to leave this gap and you're going to fill it with whatever you like.
I loved that,
because it's
the
neat.
God word is so loaded for so many people. And I use higher self because that's the word that I've come to for me, but everybody is different. So I love the word, the way he just put the straight line. It's like, let's leave it open. You put your word in there so that you're comfortable while reading. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was one of those people. Because when I was about 30, that was when it all started for me in an overt way, and it started for me within the context of the Christian church. So I was called to that, and that was part of my deepest delving for about 15 years. But likewise, I was called clearly out of it. So I had to walk away from the church and from God as I'd understood him. I was angry with what the hell was it I'd been talking to all this time, when I recognized that there was no such thing as an outside authoritative God up there who from time to time intervened in human affairs. That wasn't how it was at all, and I was cross. But I was also shown a vision of this wide open landscape, no paths, no roads, no signposts, no nothing, off you go. And that was how the rest of my journey started to unfold. I've lost track of the actual question or the topic that we were dealing with.
That's right. We were and we should mention for the listeners that we're referencing to Christopher Miller's beautiful book called The Spiritual Artist, which is, there we go, beautiful cover. It is my current favorite go-to book, because Chris articulated in his book all the things that I had felt inside but couldn't join together. And so that's why that was just such a beautiful discovery for me. And then that, through Finding Your Joy, which is how I found the book, and then I found Chris, and then things have just opened and developed. And now we're having this conversation.
And it feels as though we could have two of these.
We could have one of these every week, I think, and still never get exhausted. All right, so just before we wrap things up, where are you now with your painting? What are you exploring in this moment currently?
Woo-hoo. Right, after such intensive online involvement in terms of art, I happen to live in a small city called Wakefield, where there is quite a thriving art community, and I have a studio in a big building where there's lots of other artists. Not that we are a community in that sense. We don't see each other. We're ships that pass in the night, Yeah. But there are other places where there are studios. Basically, there's quite a thriving art community in Wakefield, and I am literally just starting to make connections with real life artists, and it's very exciting. And I went on a course recently. It was a funded course. I got a place on it, and I was in a room for 2 days with 21 other artists. It was so exciting.
Yeah.
I came away from that wanting to find a way of encouraging our meeting up, and I wanted collaboration in my work. And then what's happened is a young man has kind of been on the periphery. I've known him. I haven't known him as an artist. I only discovered very recently what he did, and he and I are meeting up regularly. And it turns out that he's happy and excited too about the idea of collaboration. So that's what's exciting me at the moment. I'm an abstract painter. He's a hyper-realistic drawer. What do we make together?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's exciting me quite a bit. And I'm really looking forward to see what unfolds from there. We've got one idea already, and that's going to start coming in and being realized. So watch this space.
That's beautiful. And I love the fact that there's quite a opposite ends of the spectrum, not only in your artistic disciplines, but your ages. Because I've had a little bit of
29.
experience with that. A few years ago, I did some study, and in the classroom, there were young people from 15 right up to 70s. And I was a little bit like, oh, I don't want to sit in it, I don't want to be with these teenagers. Ugh. But over time, the relationships that built were just absolutely beautiful and something I really cherish. And now, because of that, I mentor lots of young fashion designers and teach lots of young people embroidery because I saw the gift in that. And they had wisdom that I don't have, and they had knowledge that I don't have. And the older ones had wisdom and knowledge that the young ones didn't have. And for me, it was like going back to that village. You know how 100 years ago, everybody in the village had their place, everybody was valued, regardless of your age. And we don't have that now because we're also isolated in our individual little homes. And I love the word collaboration, because I'm feeling a similar pull to find my tribe, to build a community. And I really think for many of us, that's going to be the way forward. And there'll be different tribes and different communities focusing on different things. But I'm super excited to see what comes of your new findings and how we develop as a society and as a world through that collaboration. Instead of the me, get, build. It's like, what can we come together? What can we achieve by being open to everybody's diversity, coming together and seeing what we can create.
And beyond monetization of everything that we do.
Yeah.
I've felt that shift in me, and I'm so happy. And I found the other thing that I found is simply a whole new level of playfulness. I'm a coach on a course that encourages people to play and not think about results. And I found in me there was still a vestige of something that wanted me to always be making my real art. And it's not that I didn't explore and play in the early stages of each painting, but I rarely took a pause in between series of work to just have a playful, exploratory, experimental time. And I didn't use sketchbooks, and that has all started to change. I'm sketching virtually every day as I sit at home, mindlessly. Maybe I'm listening to a podcast or watching something on the screen, but it's gone beyond the idea that everything has to be done for money. Building an audience has lost its gloss for me, and everything now, everything for me in my life is about more than ever being surrendered completely to the flow. And I was surrendered 35 years ago, or however long ago it is, when something beyond me broke into my life. It was so amazing, and so I was so completely loved that there was no option for me. I surrendered to that, and I was surrendered forever from that day. But the depth of surrender to each individual moment has just grown exponentially, and it's a good place to be.
Well, that's just beautiful. And I think
we never need to work too hard at making things happen that are good for us.
Yeah, so that's great. And I think you will love Chris's book when you get to the chapter of all about surrender, because that was the topic that I'm currently integrating, and we had a wonderful, juicy conversation about that. So I'll be interested to talk to you after you finish the book again and see what you see at the end of it. So it's good. All right, so before we leave, anything else you would like to say or leave us with some words of wisdom?
No, I can't. If they're needed, they seem to come. But right now, I'm just thankful, and thank you for asking me to come and have this chat with you. It's been really nice. I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, thank you. I just think you're a beautiful, energetic, artistic person, and we need more of us. You, me, other people expressing themselves authentically in whatever way it is for them. And if we,
That,
my
for
belief,
sure.
if we were all doing that, the world would change.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
That's
That's the thing to remember, is that the 2 years of being pressured by a pandemic have had a wonderful outcome that isn't yet fully seen. And I'm not saying that there was nothing bad that happened, but the good of it is waiting to flow. I definitely feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Well, thank you very much. Now, Irene, where can people find you if they would like to connect with you?
I do have a website, irenepurcellart.com. It's a little bit lagging. It needs a bit of an update, but you can sign up to a newsletter there and you can hear from me every few weeks. So, but also Instagram, that's the place where I'm actually most active. And that again is just at Irene Purcell Art. I do come on and chat on Instagram and share things quite frequently. So
beautiful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a rich and gorgeous conversation, as I thought it would be. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Crystal. It's been lovely.
Bye.